propagating your own plants can give you so many benefits in the garden. Rather than sowing seeds direct and maybe losing them to insects or animals, everything is controlled, a nice environment to bring your little seedlings on, and then you can plant them out. And this video is looking at different ways of doing it and some quite simple methods that you can use without great expense. And we're starting here in the house because a windowsill gives many options, mainly for temperature, because you've got the ambient warmth of the house which can get your seeds underway. Seeds need a bit more warmth to germinate than they do seedlings need to grow. So that's why it's a very efficient way to germinate your seeds where there's already some warmth, like in the house, and it's even warm overnight. If you do it, say in a greenhouse, you've got quite cool nights often that really slow the process down. So here's some examples. There's lobelia, actually, flower seeds that we sowed a couple of weeks ago, and they're so tiny, these seeds, that you can hardly see them, and that's why we've done them in a tray that we're going to prick out. We'll see that in a minute. And they keep the little hood on, keeps the moisture in. And similarly here we have basil, which we sowed just 2 days ago, and you can still see the seeds. Actually, they're on top, and there are some just in that 2 days already starting to germinate. You can see the little roots coming out. Seeds don't need to be buried deeply, and you can see what's going on. I'm doing a little trial here with some vermiculite as well, so different composts. And let's head on out to the greenhouse now and have a look and see what's going on out there. This is my greenhouse where I'm raising, in this area here, which is not huge, enough plants for a quarter of an acre, 1,000 square meters. You can do a lot of propagation in really quite a small area, partly through using trays that are a very efficient use of space. For example, a module tray like this, which has 60 cells, and so you can fit a lot of plants into a tray like that, and it's made of plastic so it doesn't fall apart after one use. These trays also, you don't need to rinse them out or clean them or do anything after each use. We just pop out our plants and then refill them and plant again. And this greenhouse that we're in here is a very nice warm space if the sun is out, but today it's actually not sunny at all, and it's not a lot warmer in here than outside. In fact, it's right at the moment it's 12.5 centigrade, 54 Fahrenheit, and so protection though. And out there is a cold frame which I use occasionally for plants. That's another option, and that at the moment is only 10 centigrade, 50 Fahrenheit. So this is early spring, it's early April, and if the sun does come out, then boy, do things get going. Other options for modules, for example, polystyrene. If you can buy it, it's not easy to find these anymore, sadly. And in fact, this tray I've kept going since about 1985 when I bought it, and it's been reused many, many times since, 2 or 3 times a year maybe. And so heading for 100 uses now, and still going. It's been losing a bit of its edges, but basically trays like this, you can raise lovely plants. There's enough compost in there. For example, those lettuce and peas that are ready to plant out. In fact, they were ready a week ago. We'll look at that. You know, the size of planting is another factor. Whereas these module trays, the plastic ones, they don't have quite so much compost in, so they're very suitable for example, for a tray of lettuce like that. You see how pretty these lettuces are as well. So that's different varieties of lettuce that we pricked out into the compost in this little plastic tray, and then they're quite easy to pop out of there, and it means you can plant them without any damage to the root ball. So this propagation is all about getting plants underway in an efficient way, lots of them in a small space, and planting them out. You know, you're saving time, you're gaining productivity. This is just called a seed tray. That's a simple option for filling with, not too full, with compost, and then sowing seeds. Seeds that are little seeds that work well for pricking out, which we'll also have a look at. And you can see, for example, here I've got a seed tray. We grow a lot of French marigolds, so that's dwarf French marigolds that we're going to be pricking out next week into little module cells, and then they'll be planted out amongst tomatoes and around the garden. And there's a few rudbeckia as well. So you can do different sowings in a tray like this we often do them in lines across and get lots of seeds coming up at once. And it's quite an efficient way of doing it because you can sow all your seeds on one day, different sorts, all in the tray together like that. And finally, in terms of these trays, I'll show you this one, so we can come back to this in a minute. So that's celery. Celery is a very small seed, so you can hardly see them, and they also don't want light on them, so we just scattered them on top there. And that was on the 22nd of March, so 2 weeks ago, just over. And I germinated them on the windowsill in the conservatory, and now they're growing on here over the hotbed that we'll look at in a minute. And they're going to be pricking out. I'll show you a little bit of pricking out of celery. Finally, there is an option. With all of these things I've shown you so far, these are all plastic and not ideal. You can reuse them many times, but even so, if you want to get away from that, this is a soil blocker, and it's a simple little device that you fill it with, you push that down into a bucket with wet compost, get it really full, lift that out and have a tray to hand and press out the little blocks in there. And then you've got, in this case, 20 little blocks. This is probably a bit on the small side actually, but they have worked. And in fact, then you sow your seeds in the little blocks, and that was how I started off these onions, for example. So I multi-sowed the little blocks with onion seed, and then transplanted the little blocks into this tray of potting compost. So there's another option. There are so many ways you can do this. Once you understand the principles of what you're doing, you can play around with different versions of events. But one simple way to avoid work is to raise your plants in as little compost as possible, really. And that's why I love these trays. Probably they're my favorite, because that's 60 plants, there's not much compost, and these plants are ready to go out at this stage. So we shall see. I'll show you planting little plants like that in a minute.